Alright, so here's the picture. You're a kid in the 1980s. One day after school, you go to this mysterious place called the Video Arcade where all the cool kids are hanging out. Or perhaps it was a family trip on a Saturday if you didn't live near one, I don't know. Anyways, you and your hypothetical siblings and comrades divide and conquer this neon-bolstered establishment, and you are now left to your own devices. Or to be more exact, left to whichever device does the best job at grabbing your attention. Enter the attract screen. This is the term I see used most for when video games decide to play themselves when left idle on a title screen. Other terms I've seen thrown around are demo mode, advertise mode, and sometimes game over mode. But I didn't exactly grow up in this era. Arcades of the traditional fashion have gone the way of the dodo long before my cerebellum was developed enough to properly grasp a Game Boy. When my 6-year-old self sat there drooling trying to comprehend what I was holding in my hand, I had the idea that the game moving on and playing itself was more of a mockery to me. If not just to be like a screensaver on a computer or a DVD player, then as if to express impatience.
Not ready to press start yet. Fine, I'ma just play myself so you can see what I'm all about. Play me already, you dumb shit!
But of course, the kind of arcade I speak of never truly died. Its spirit lives on in the form of barcades and even some used game shops, which I do visit every once in a while. I'd walk in and see all these machines playing by themselves. I didn't really overthink it at the time. The title is displayed on the marquee, so no need to display it on the screen, right? May as well show it's in the game before you drop in your chump change. Makes sense. Then one day I had some passing thoughts about how to design a title screen for a video game, and I thought, why don't I see these in video games all that much anymore? And that's when I got the idea to write this script. This is one of many examples of a game design trope that basically lived and died with the arcades, while the tradition of programming it into home console games slowly faded away. Some people describe mechanics such as lives and score in a very similar way, though often disparagingly, claiming them to be superfluous at best and a nuisance at worst. Personally, I think both mechanics are still very valuable if used correctly, but that's a tangent for another time. What I'm here to talk about today is that at least attract screens can be a vessel for clever game design. From things as simple as teaching you how the game works, to tidbits of lore like Chun-Li not wanting to disclose her body weight. So for this video, I'd like to go over some of the cool, interesting, or just plain wacky examples of how the attract screen was used over the years. It's common knowledge at this point, but in Pac-Man, the nicknames of all the ghosts are actually indicative of the patterns that their AI follows. One of the earliest examples I can think of a game that explicitly gives you tips rather than simply show the gameplay, though they are rather vague about it. Ms. Pac-Man, Super Pac-Man, and most other spin-offs don't include any hints of this sort as far as I know, which is kind of a shame. I also have to shout out Retro Game Mechanics Explained for his various videos on Pac-Man's AI. Very good channel, you really should watch this if you haven't already. Galaga has a glitch where you can actually control the game in its demo mode. At startup, you're able to press the fire button and it actually responds. With some clever setup and shooting at the right times, you can break the sequence where you're usually supposed to get captured by the tractor beam and gain complete control of the game in the process. Shortly after though, it resets and performs its self-test sequence. This bug has been kept from the very first version of the game all the way to the Cut! Okay, so while I was gathering footage of the original 1981 version of the game through MAME, I could not for the life of me figure out how to trigger this bug. This website, which I'll link in the description, has the most detailed documentation of the bug, but I feel like there's some information missing. I've tried all the different ROM versions for Galaga, and the only ones that seem to have this bug are the Ms. Pac-Man and Galaga combo units that are much more common today. I could have sworn that the bug was there in the original, but either I was fooled or I just don't have the correct ROM versions that have the bug. I'd love to dig deeper to figure out the truth of all of this, but this video has been taking me long enough, so we'll just have to move on. It's been well known by cheat code websites for a long time that if you hold down the jump buttons in Sonic the Hedgehog's demo mode, he seemingly gets confused and dies very easily. It wasn't until I started editing this very video that I got curious enough to see if anyone found out why this happens. Thanks to the cutting room floor, I finally have a complete answer. You guys are epic. For the most spectacular bug of all though, we must set our eyes on Animal Crossing Wild World for the Nintendo DS. The Animal Crossing series usually has some pretty well-polished title screens that show off your town and let you observe your villagers wandering around. The problem with that is that since people were using cheating devices to plant illegal items in other people's worlds, this caused an epidemic of brick copies of Wild World since it would crash trying to load your town right as the game starts. On the subject, I have one more YouTube channel to shout out. This fella documents all sorts of programming quirks in the Animal Crossing games, and even though I'm not super big on the series, I found these videos highly entertaining. Seriously, give all these channels I'm citing a watch. They deserve your views. Super Mario World's title screen intrigued me a lot as a kid, because you could be fooled into thinking that this is a level that just doesn't exist and is only for the title screen. But as you may know, this game is full of secrets. There was no feeling more cathartic than finding the title screen level that always eluded me and finally getting to play it myself. In a good handful of Metroid games, the Attract mode shows off secret areas you may have missed, or hidden abilities you may not have learned about on your own, such as shine sparking or wall jumping. Super Metroid may have had the animals to teach you these things in-game, but they only hint at them having done so in Fusion and aren't even present in Zero Mission, so for the latter two games, I think this inclusion in the demo cutscenes is pretty valuable. Super Street Fighter II Turbo's little Attract animation hints at Akuma's existence. Considering how much of a secret he was at the time of release and how hard he is to find in-game, it must have caught the curiosity of keen-eyed players that were already familiar with the earlier versions of Street Fighter II. I'm sure there are many more examples of secret characters being teased like this in other fighting games, but this is the first one that comes to mind. Most, if not all, Fire Emblem games show off the characteristics and battle animations of every class in the game for its Attract mode. Especially for the older games, these can be really useful, because if you somehow didn't have the game's manual or the internet, you're probably not going to be able to learn some important things about them. That is, unless one of those villagers gives you a hint about it, but those tips are very few and far between. In the original Doom, they made sure not to let the demo mode's programming go to waste, and actually let you record your own gameplay as a sequence of inputs. This almost immediately spawned a giant online speedrunning scene surrounding the game, and it was really the first of its kind since online video sharing wasn't feasible back then. Of course, this feature would return in Doom 2 and Quake, further fanning the flames to this new world of speedrunning. Now, you may have noticed that very few games coming out these days have any demo playback on the title screen, some not even having the most simple Attract animations besides like company logos or something. And well, I can think of a few reasons for that, but it's best to put into perspective how Attract screens changed over time. The proliferation of home computers and game consoles in the mid-80s gave lots of opportunity for game designers to deviate from what's expected in arcade games. Outside, and sometimes even inside the arcades, some games started giving little blurbs on the title screen explaining what the game is about and what exactly it is you're doing, and more effort would be put into story as time went on. I consider Ninja Gaiden a particularly big milestone towards this trend, being one of the first big console games to make heavy use of cutscenes, albeit with rudimentary and limited animation. Hell, even arcade games were in on it. Take a look at Final Fight, which came out the same year. It double-dipped, having both a prologue cutscene and a traditional demo mode. From the 90s onward, it was pretty easy to expect cinematics to coexist with, if not replace those in-game demos. This wasn't necessarily a bad change, in fact it felt like a natural evolution. Video games were getting bigger, more complex, capable of telling deeper stories. What better way is there to hype up the experience for the player in this case? Well, title screen demos of the traditional variety did see a brief resurgence with the N64 library, and if I had to guess, I'd attribute it to how new and novel 3D gaming was at the time. Of course, in more contemporary games you still see some callbacks to this trope, typically in racing games and party games where story takes a back seat. But for the most part, this relic of old design philosophy was no longer necessary. If you needed to teach the player how a game works, we have things like tutorial levels that do that in a much more involved fashion, and odds are people have seen footage of the game on the internet way before they bought it, be it through ad campaigns or more grassroots content creators showing it off.
Hello everybody, my name is Markiplier.
As a result, title screens don't really have to do much besides the bare minimum these days. You still might see some really high-effort title screens every now and then, but most games prefer to cut the crap and just slap on a logo, background, and a menu. Now, of course, this also isn't necessarily a bad thing. We all know not to judge a book by its cover, but people will be able to notice and appreciate the attention to detail. After all, this is what people see every time they start a new session, and some games take advantage of this, like the title screen changing to reflect what parts of the games you've finished. It's one of those things where you don't really mind when it's a little plain, but the extra bit of polish will stick out. You're there for the game, but little things like that can really elevate the experience. Anyways, that's all I wrote, and I can't figure out how to stretch the runtime of this video any further. There really isn't a serious point I'm trying to make with this video. I just think that the things people did with title screens are cool, and I hope you appreciate them too. If you're a game developer, hopefully I at least got your noggin jogging a little bit about how to spice up the title screen for your game. And if there's a particularly clever title screen you know of that I didn't show off in this video, please leave a comment, and not just for the engagement the algorithm wants. I genuinely would like to hear about it. Before I leave you though, I've got kind of a bombshell announcement to make. I quit. Okay, that's only like half true. For context, I was planning on having this ready by the last quarter of 2024, but between the many script rewrites, getting sick during the winter, and putting off work so often just to make sure that both my mental and physical health was in order, I wasn't gonna have it done on time. And during that whole process, I came to a really important realization. I just don't want to make YouTube videos. You know how my channel description says game dev? Yeah, that isn't just a bluff. I've been cooking up something huge in the background for years, and that project is my true calling. To put it bluntly, I only wanted to grow a YouTube channel on the side so that I had an easy way to advertise my game when it was finished. All those music videos I've been making for several years was just a byproduct of me sharpening my music production skills, and I can go several months without having anything to show for my studying. I was starting to feel like a scumbag for not telling my audience why it takes so long to upload new videos, even though a lot of you probably have no such expectations of me. So I figured now is the time to be honest. I'm never gonna get my game finished if I'm wasting so much energy editing videos, so it's time to stop. If any of you care to keep up with this project of mine or anything else that I might be up to in the future, you can follow me on Blue Sky or check my personal website every once in a while. There is a small chance that I might backpedal on this melodramatic announcement and upload something small to this YouTube channel again, and who knows, maybe those videos would be devlogs about the game I'm working on, but don't count on it. For now, I will just have to see you on the other side.